Happening, folks. You might have noticed I have inherited some new real estate. If you'd like an explanation and a quick tour, stick around at the end of the video. After my first viewing of today's movie, in terms of acting and straight-up good old-fashioned poignancy, I thought it was a masterpiece, but about halfway through my second viewing, I realized it was actually a lot more than that. The critics seem to be divided by James Ashcroft's latest psychological horror, The Rule of Jenny Penn. A lot of normal folks like you and I don't seem to like it much at all, and apparently some of my own friends don't even consider it horror. If you've been here before, you know I love breaking down these sorts of movies, but I am extra excited today about this specific movie because, and I don't want to sound clickbaity or hyperbolic, but this movie might have the deepest, most profound subtext I have encountered in a horror movie. Possibly in any movie. If you've seen the movie already, whether you liked it or not, I'm going to do a rapid recap of the surface level plot events right now, so we're starting on the same page. And I will do it in less than 90 seconds.
The movie opens with an irritable judge who's so disinterested in what's happening in his courtroom, he is focused on an insect instead. He kills the insect, and then he sends the accused man away to jail for half his life. Then he has a massive stroke and ends up in this nursing home. 5 minutes after he arrives, a fellow resident accidentally sets himself on fire, and later that same night he gets glared at by some unfriendly fellow walking past his room. The elitist judge hates the care home, hates its staff, and all the residents, and he makes sure everybody knows that every time he speaks. The next day, the judge sees the man who peeked into his room sitting alone with a doll. A friendly woman explains the ones with the dolls are all crazy, but the woman ends up being just as detached from reality herself. The judge is forced to suffer through supervised showers and baths as he struggles to cope with his new physical limitations. And right when he thinks things couldn't get any worse, Dave, the old man with the doll, pours the judge's urine receptacle all over him in the middle of the night. And after several of these unbearable interactions, the staff's lack of belief in his stories forces the judge to take matters into his own hands. But resisting Dave makes things even worse for the judge and everybody else. And on top of that, the staff still doesn't believe Dave's doing anything wrong, and in fact, they believe the judge is the real problem while Dave is faultless. Dave even manages to clear out an entire dance floor full of residents without any retribution. With his condition worsening and seeing no other options, the judge coerces his roommate into double-teaming Dave in a laundry room, and the story comes to an end with Dave appearing to come to an end.
Now obviously, I skipped a few details along the way to keep that under 90 seconds, but that is the essence of this plot. Now of course, told that way, admittedly, there's not much going on. Despite some brilliant acting from literally everybody involved, there's not a lot to take away from that version of the story. So, now I'm going to show you how I saw it.
The movie opens with Judge Stephen Mortensen presiding over a trial. As we join him, his focus is wavering, not towards justice, but towards an insect trespassing on his bench. With the detached precision of a man who'd rather play executioner than arbiter today, he crushes the bug in an act of foreshadowing. The prosecution snaps him back to the case at hand, where the judge swiftly eviscerates the accused, dismissing the defense's attempts to frame him as remorseful by highlighting the number of times the defendants committed this exact awful crime. But his scorn is not reserved just for the defendant. He turns his disgust towards the victim's mother next and chastises her for failing to shield her children from this repeat offender deviant fiend. And if you're thinking this judge is a dick, think again. He's been on the bench a long time, and this case is about SA involving children. I'd be a lot less refined and articulate in his position, I promise you. In the absence of lions, hyenas will rule, suggests the judge. The people being admonished by the judge probably aren't all that impressed with the judicial poetry, but to us in the audience, that line will hold a lot of dramatic weight later on in the story. And that's when the real drama begins. If you're familiar with the signs of a stroke, the slurred speech, the facial drooping, the sudden urge to argue with God himself, you'll recognize the judge's futile struggle to power through his own neurological meltdown. Spoiler alert, he doesn't win this fight. The first act comes to a close as the judge slumps forward and the law's cold machinery grinds to a temporary halt. Justice is blind, as they say, but apparently it is also prone to aneurysms.
Act 1 was a masterclass in dread as exposition. Killing that insect wasn't just foreshadowing, it's the ultimate irony. The judge crushes the life out of the insect and the guilty party in his courtroom just seconds before his own biology crushes the life out of him. The hyena comment will serve as our eventual Chekhov's gun. More on that later. And as we're about to see, this short opening act encapsulates the entire point this film is going to make over the next 2 acts.
The stroke's aftermath is etched onto the judge's face quite literally as his right eye droops with the telltale sag of a neurological betrayal. It's a highly effective, subtle, practical effect that whispers, "Congratulations, Your Honor, you're now serving society as a statistic or a cautionary tale." The judge sits fuming, reluctantly deposited at the Royal Pine Muse Care Home, a name that promises pastoral serenity, but will ultimately deliver a kind of bureaucratic purgatory instead. The fresh air offers him no reprieve, but it does provide him an introduction to Howie, a fellow resident who finds some cosmic humor in the cosmic horror of the nearby lurking cat, who's known amongst the home's residents as a harbinger of death. Howie also gets a dark kick out of the fact the judge ended up in this subpar facility as it was the only one available with vacancies. But the shared laughter is incinerated when Howie, on taking the first sip from his flask, spits the contents out all around himself and immediately ignites like a human tiki torch. The judge watches, paralyzed by both his stroke and the universe's punchline. Apparently, even here at a rest home, the universe appears to prefer slapstick over dignity. Watching Howie's face slow down tells us this event was even darker than it appears, as I suggest whatever touched his lips was not what he'd put into the flask himself. That night, the judge's insomnia grants him a front row seat to Dave Creeley's silent audition for the most chilling glare in a nursing home award. Dave marks the judge with a stare before abruptly shutting his door, which will also prove to be foreshadowing. By daylight, the judge stews among residents he'd have dismissed as beneath him a week ago. That denotes the New Zealand Order of Merit, which is hardly a match for the new order of shared pudding cups he's currently enjoying, I suppose. But if you see his resentment as snobbery, I'd suggest putting yourself into his slippers for just a moment. It's an expression of raw terror. A man who was healthy and capable and fiercely independent just a moment ago has woken up to find he can't even trust his own brain anymore. The judge notices Dave sat at the back of the room as if he's overseeing things. He's clutching a doll, which is a common therapy for dementia patients. Then the judge's new reality bends a touch further towards horror when a fellow resident babbles about her family's imminent return from holiday, blissfully unaware they abandoned her there years ago. The film then plunges us into the ultimate violation of privacy in the form of the judge's sponge bath. After abrasively asserting he's far stronger than she's giving him credit for, the judge is left alone for 30 seconds as the nurse goes to grab him a towel. And he learns the hard way. His body's become a traitorous stranger, clearly siding with his now faulty brain. The wide camera angle lingers on the scene, unflinching, with the judge hidden, leaving us to imagine what's happening in the tub. Jeffrey Rush's performance in this scene is a silent, powerful scream against the inevitable indignities of aging we will all eventually face. Dave Creeley, ever the talented method actor, demonstrates his confused dementia patient routine for us in the audience by coaxing the staff into complacency with his Oscar-worthy mumbles and vacant stares. If you think this setup is unrealistic, I'd suggest you don't read newspapers. Or you've never been inside one of these budget care homes yourself. I'd also suggest Dave possesses a rather unique ability in this regard, and I'll elaborate on that point shortly. Dave's true cruelty reveals itself in the middle of the night when he douses the judge with a portable urinal filled with the judge's own emissions. And as a side note, I, for one, still can't decide if it was better that it was his own. Never mind. But the judge's animated complaints fall on calloused itched ears, highlighting another horrific reality in these sorts of facilities. The overworked, underappreciated, often exhausted and underpaid staff members dismiss the event as some sort of accident. After all, stroke patients are unreliable by virtue of their conditions, and to these workers, the judge is just another angry old man struggling to adjust to the new surroundings with pajamas full of piss. And Dave's just a harmless, daft old man with a doll. Except no, he isn't. With the lines clearly drawn into the faded, worn carpet patterns, the judge, now fully aware of Dave's predatory nature, declares war with a four-letter word starting with C and a perfectly placed pudding projectile. It's a culinary coup de grace that's a bit absurd, but undoubtedly cathartic if you're the judge. The assault makes the judge's roommate Tony gasp, because he's painfully aware of the price of defiance. And later that same night, Tony does pay. Dave unveils his brutal ritual of humiliation, trapping poor Tony in a cycle of routine helplessness so the judge understands exactly what happens to those who don't accept he rules the home. And a moment later, the home's furry foreteller of death alerts Dave by exiting a dying man's room. But instead of calling for help, Dave demonstrates the true depths of his cold indifference and another terrifying care home reality when he quietly shuts the door on the home's latest casualty, an act that would be far less likely to happen in a well-funded facility.
And that brings us to my favorite scene in this movie, which I believe to be the most devastating scene in the movie because it perfectly distills the horror James Ashcroft wants to convey with this story. So, indulge me a moment, folks, while I pull these layers apart. It is about to get pretty nerdy in here.
John Roll's song, If I Only Had Time, plays over this scene. It is a beautiful, bittersweet anthem about mortality and missed opportunities, and I've linked it in the description if you're curious. And for these elderly residents, the lyrics are literally true in this scene. They are dancing in whatever stolen time they have left. Dave Creeley's entrance literizes the song's theme. He becomes time itself by bulldozing their fragile and fleeting joy right into the ground. He turns the song's title into the cruelest joke there is. The scene shot in slow motion to induce a memory-like state. It makes the scene like a dream, and that makes the dance floor appear like a recollection, as if we're watching something that's already happened being relived. Dave's apparent brutality shatters the nostalgia by forcing the residents back into the present moment with all of their real-life problems and unfortunate indignities. The dancing itself is significant because in care homes, dancing is practically a ritual. It's one of the last communal acts of self-determination and vitality these people have. And the point this scene is really making is exactly why I think this film is a masterpiece. Dave Creeley isn't just knocking them over, he's erasing their agency. He's reducing them to obstacles or things in his way. These are people society already treat as invisible, and this scene essentially weaponizes that vulnerability. By clearing out the dance floor, Dave's mirroring the way the world discards elderly people. As a metaphor, Dave's grin isn't just plain malice, it is the smirk of entropy, as some folks smarter than I would say. He doesn't hate these people, he's reveling in being the inevitable. The song begs for just a bit more time, but as we'll find out shortly, Dave's been watching these people his entire life, and he knows time always wins. When he scatters these dancers, it's not just violence, it's a demonstration and a reminder their joy has always been borrowed, and time will always come to take it back from them eventually. Just like it's going to do eventually with everybody listening to this review right now.
Was that too much? Sorry. We also find out at the end of this scene that Dave has asthma, which is nowhere near as heavy, but equally important.
Madeline, the ever-credulous bureaucrat, dismisses the judge's accusations again, after Dave's flawless, confused old man act keeps him below her radar again. And it's starting to look like Dave can get away with literally anything within the confines of these walls. The judge finds Tony cowering in an old laundry room, and he suggests Tony's being cowardly for not standing up to Dave the way the judge wants him to. But Tony tells him he doesn't have everyone pegged the way he thinks he does. Not surprisingly, Dave escalates things by stealing residents' personal belongings to frame the judge with. And then the judge happens upon proof of Dave's history when he discovers photographic evidence of his 50-year reign of terror. It's as though Dave has always been here. And then the judge drifts away, and when he comes to again, he is sat across from Dave Creeley, of all people. And with a nearly surgical level of cruelty, Dave lets him know he's been watching him, drifting in and out, since he arrived. And he points to Sean Dunn in the corner to let the judge know exactly where he's going to end up. And he says it with such conviction and confidence, it sets the judge off. And again, one moment the judge is confronting Dave, the next he's gaping at a cognitive test where his clock drawing attempt resembles a primitive Salvador Dali painting. The judge is now completely unreliable in how he's conveying the story events to us, to the extent his rehab officer offers him his own doll. And it is no coincidence his interactions with Dave Creeley are pushing the judge deeper into delirium. The battle of the wills continues as Dave ruthlessly abuses Tony in front of the judge. When the judge asks Tony why he doesn't involve his family to get things sorted out, Tony admits he doesn't want his grandchildren thinking he's anything less of a hero than they think he is now. During a television program about African wildlife, Dave's laughter metamorphosizes into a hyena's cackle. This reminds us in the audience of the judge's sentiment in the opening scene, and it also reminds the judge of his own thoughts on the subject. So, in his deteriorating state, the judge decides to get proactive by paying a visit to Dave's empty room. And the next time Dave Creeley decides to have a go at the judge, he finds all his asthma inhalers mysteriously empty. And that leaves him crumpled up on the floor, mirroring his limp, lifeless puppet, Jenny Penn. Under the impression Dave's no longer an issue, the judge and Tony sit comfortably watching a nature program about the relationship between moray eels and cleaner shrimp, suggesting, not very subtly, partnerships in the wild between unlikely individuals can be beneficial to each of their survival. But the judge blinks out again, and when he comes to, he finds himself at the mercy of a now fully recovered and unhinged Dave Creeley. He starts stripping a blind, defenseless woman naked, forcing the judge to watch. But somehow, at his lowest point, physically and mentally, the judge finds a surge of strength, and a single, wobbly strike sends Dave crashing to the floor. And fortunately, today, justice delayed and partially delirious is still justice, for the time being at least. With the judge now isolated in a medical room, Dave sneaks in and delivers a chilling reveal. He remembers the judge from an awards ceremony decades ago, and he tells the judge he wore his honor like a crown way back then, but look at you now, he gloats. And this is less exposition than a eulogy for the judge's former self, and the judge seems to accept it, or at least he pretends to. The second act isn't brought to a close with violence, but a promise of violence. The effort the judge made trying to stop Dave ignites something deep inside Tony, so the ex-rugby star, trembling but defiant, channels his ancient Maori ancestors with a haka war cry that dies in his lungs when his legs deny him the strength to complete it. But his efforts are no less heroic. For the brevity, Tony's declared his intentions, and Dave Creeley knows it. Before the act closes, a brief cameo from Nathaniel Leese of Matrix fame underscores the moment's cultural weight, with Maori pride far outlasting Tony's physical strength.
This second act dance floor scene isn't just the movie's thesis, it is the movie's heart. Dave isn't killing anybody. He's killing the moments they have left. And giving Tony's haka is a war cry against what Dave is doing. It's actually a war cry against death and dying itself. With the excruciating irony being, of course, Tony's haka is choked off by the very body he is fighting so desperately to preserve. So, if Act 1 asked the question, who rules when lions leave, Act 2 answered it, hyenas, and they're laughing at you.
In a final act of well-deserved vengeance, Tony's public haka baits Dave Creeley into searching him out later that night. The judge and Tony ambush Dave in the laundry room, but instead of explosive Hollywood warfare, we're treated to a realistic rugby tackle from a broken old star and some quiet retribution delivered away from the view of the home's delicate residents. As the moray eel joins arms with the cleaner shrimp, the unlikely pair triumph together. And the story concludes with our three main story arcs closing out perfectly. Tony, once too gentle and timid to fight, finally finds his courage. The judge, once too proud to connect with other people, expresses a heartfelt gratitude to his new friend. And Dave Creeley, presumably now just another body wheeled out of a care home, learns a hyena will always die by itself. Or does it? The final scene features the cat designating the judge the home's next casualty. But we never actually find out what happened to Dave Creeley.
Now, obviously, Act 3 is about vengeance and resolution, but there's none of the usual fanfare or fireworks we're accustomed to seeing at this point in a movie. And in that same vein, the Judge and Tony story arcs don't climax in a traditional Luke Skywalker fashion either. Instead, they sort of settle back into place, like dust after a storm has blown through. Now, if you've been wondering why Dave was so cruel to everybody, or why the entire home was terrified of him, or how he kept getting away with this stuff over and over and over again,
this isn't a story about a psychopath in a nursing home. It's about the first ever psychopath, the one who's been lurking in hospitals and care homes since the dawn of time. Allow me to introduce you to the world's most mundane bad guy, the only villain you can never stop who always gets away with it. Ladies and gentlemen, meet Dave, the Angel of Death. Dave isn't just a monster, he's the literal Grim Reaper. Think about it. He's always been there, on the fringe, like he's got his eye on everyone. He's not a man in these photos, he's a fixture within the home. He's demonstrating death doesn't retire, it just changes uniforms from time to time. Dave Creeley doesn't murder you, he curates your decay. He agitates and exacerbates your condition, leading you directly towards your inescapable demise. The judge's annoyance with Dave's behavior caused a progression in his condition. Royal Pine Mews isn't Dave's care home, it is his feeding ground. Tony has been around Dave, and therefore death by association, for much longer than the judge has. He's closer to it, and that's why he's terrified of it. The judge has only just arrived, and he still falsely believes he'll be going home as soon as he gets his legs working. Wiping away Tony's tears at the end of this story is acknowledgement the judge really didn't understand his situation. Regarding Dave's animalistic laugh, hyenas aren't just scavengers, they're opportunists. They feast on the weak. They hang back and wait for death to come, which it always does. Dave Creeley's actions are dismissed repeatedly by the staff because to them, death is normalized, as are the behaviors of people nearing death. Strokes and dementia and accidents, it's all just paperwork to these people. Dying, unfortunately, is the one thing you cannot report to the HR department. And finally, my dance floor scene, and the obvious point I missed during my first viewing of this film. Dave Creeley takes over the dance floor because it's not their song at all, it's his. It's a song on Death's playlist, and if you've ever been near to a loved one close to that time, death isn't just about the end, it's about stealing whatever beauty is left before the end. The real horror of this movie isn't that we're all aging, it's that we're all aging with Dave Creeley in our homes. No matter how we fight him, no matter how much pudding we launch into his eye, we will never, ever be able to kick him out.
As a closing thought, if you're resting easy on the idea the elected and unelected officials responsible for sorting out this type of thing on our behalf would never allow something like this to happen to you because the care home you're going to end up in is going to be lovely, just take a look at how those people are treating us right now. Don't tell me this isn't a horror movie. Until next time, folks.
Happening, folks. If you're still here, thanks for sticking around. I know you've been here long enough already today, so I will keep this short. I've been working my bum off over the last several weeks, and I thought I'd take a minute to explain what I've been up to. As you can see, that's me doing my usual thing there, but in a brand new place. Over the last 2 years or so, I have buried myself in this YouTube thing in hopes of growing the channel. I have followed all the rules. I've done everything in line with what the experts at YouTube YouTube have suggested, and I've done it all consistently, week in, week out, especially when things haven't gone the way I wanted them to. During that time, for whatever reason, my growth has been laughable compared to a lot of the other channels in this little movie review niche. And while I totally wish those channels all the very best, and obviously I congratulate them on their success, I've decided for me it is time to stop doing things according to YouTube's advice. And so, going forward, I'll be making my videos the way I want to from now on, and not the way I've been advised to, I guess. And that starts with this big, huge, massive, new, creepy location that I couldn't be prouder of. I mean, look at this place. Obviously, I've got way more room now than I did in the little cabin, and that'll allow me to make horror movie reviews the way I've always pictured them in my head, I guess, which is kind of like many horror movies themselves. Oh, I'll also be throwing in some of my first view reactions in case any of you missed the humorous side of the channel. I mean, I thought it was funny anyways, and I did just finish telling you, going forward, this thing's going to be entirely about me now, so there you go. So, thanks again for hanging out. I will see you all shortly, and I suppose without giving anything away, I'll say there's a good chance my next big review, I will not be presenting it alone. See you shortly.